Good evening, folks. Tonight is Monday, September 16th at 7 p.m. I'll open the Londonderry Town Council meeting with a pledge. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If everyone can please remain standing. Here at the Town Council, we have we always open the meeting with a moment of silence. And yesterday, I'll try to make it through this without my allergies flaring up. But I had the distinct privilege and honor to attend an honor flight, New England honor flight trip yesterday. And I was accompanied by someone, his name was Gene. He was a 94-year-old Korean War veteran. And I'll tell you, being a veteran myself, we don't take this word very lightly. But I mean this in the truest sense of the form. Every single one of those veterans that went down on that trip were heroes. And many times I heard, this is what I needed from the war. I've been waiting for this my whole life to get the recognition. And now I can rest in true peace. And it really was such a privilege and honor. But there was one thing when we went to the World War II Memorial. And again, my allergies might flare up. I'm sorry. At the World War II Memorial, there's a wall. And my apologies for not having up. And on that wall, there was thousands of stars. And there was a sign, a placard that says, "Here we mark the price of freedom." Here we mark the price of freedom. And it makes me think that those, because of the lives and the dedication that those who've served before us gave what they gave so that we can have free elections. We can debate healthily about politics. We can also collaborate. And the freedom to come together as a team in unity as a community. And with that, I'd like to please take a couple of moments of just remembering those that have served before us and given their lives for our freedom. Please be seated. All right, folks, we're going to move in the public comment. I was asked by our state representative, Mr. Thomas. He had asked if he could speak before us to recognize someone very special and important to this community. And with that, Representative Thomas.
Thank you. Doug Thomas, 143 Mammoth Road. And it gives me great pleasure to be here tonight for this and all this sea of, we have around the world of bad news and so forth. It's really good to be able to present some very good news. And so I would like to begin with this presentation to a very special young man here in town. I will just direct the members of the Londonderry Town Council if you have a copy of this, and I will read along. As your state representative and an Air Force veteran and retiree, it gives me great pleasure and honor to recognize an extraordinary young man who has shown determination, resilience, and commitment to excellence. Caleb Hazeltine, a 17-year-old senior at Londonderry High School, has been accepted into the Advanced Technical Field Special Warfare Operator Program in the U.S. Navy as an E-4 Petty Officer 3rd Class. His enlistment included signing a contract with the Special Forces with his ultimate goal of making the Navy SEALs team, specifically aspiring to be part of SEAL Team 6. This is a direct reflection of his commitment to defending our country and reflects his courage and patriotism. Caleb attends 2 schools simultaneously. At Londonderry High School, he diligently tackles his academic core classes, while at Alverin High School, he has immersed himself in specialized programs studying diesel mechanics, ROTC, and welding. Caleb, and he's been doing this for about the last 3 years. Caleb, being the second of 6 siblings, has shown that hard work and commitment paves the way to accomplishing what is possible. In addition to his academic pursuits, Caleb works 2 part-time jobs at a local landscaping business and a local butcher shop. He is passionate about sports and physical fitness. He makes time to help his dad Sheldon work on cars and his brother Justin building Lego sets. His mother Crystal loves the attention he gives to his family, as demonstrated by helping his sister Emma with their horse at the barn and also running late-night Slurpee and snack duty for his sisters and friends. And he has time to spend time with his girlfriend as well. And, of course, caring for his beloved Sphinx cat, Jake. Caleb continues building an unbreakable friendship and lifetime bond with his recruiter, Brandon McGee, who saw in Caleb an extremely determined and committed individual. Caleb would like to give a special thank you to Londonderry School Board Chairman Bob Slater, and also to Dr. Frawith, Colonel Cheatham, and Colonel Cole from Alverin High School. Without their hard work, getting Caleb into these programs may not have been possible. I give my congratulations to Caleb Hasseltine for his impressive accomplishments, and I wish him the very best in his future endeavors. State Representative Doug Thomas. With that, did the recruiter come yet?
No, sir.
Okay, did you want to say just a couple of words? Okay, I think just a couple of words from the recruiter, and then we'll go with the presentation, if that's okay with the council.
Most definitely.
Okay.
So if you can, if you could just introduce your name or your rank, your name, and just the recruiting office where you're out of.
Yes, sir. So my name is Chief Pavo. I'm an E7 in the United States Navy. I've been in for 14 and a half years. So I run the station in Amherst, which is considered Nashua, our Nashua station, Navy recruiting. And his recruiter is AO2 McGee, so Ordnance, second class petty officer. One thing I want to point out is it is very rare to see somebody that young show up and be incredibly prepared. And what he didn't mention, and most people don't know, is the first time he tried out for special warfare, he got picked up. And that's definitely something to mention because it's a very rigorous physical screening test that they have to do that consists of running, swimming, pull-ups, and set-ups. And it's just incredible that the first time he got in the pool, he nailed it. He killed it, and he was offered a contract right on the spot. So that's just something that I would want to say. And thank you for, just taking that leap. It's not that common these days to see someone that's patriotic, that's doing it for their country. And, that's why we're here. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Before we do the ceremony, Caleb, I'd like you to just come up to the podium, if you don't mind, please. And would you like to say anything to the council or to the community?
I don't have a lot to say. I do want to say thank you to my recruiter, Brandon McGee, and I'd also like to say a big thanks to my chief, as well as our state representative here, who has kindly represented me tonight in this award. I'd like to thank you for your time.
All right. So I have a couple words for you. Being a veteran, when you're doing missions and you're away, you're doing stuff you can't really talk about it at times. The biggest thing, two biggest things that gets you through are your brothers and sisters in arms and your family. I'm going to tell you this, man to man, bottom of my heart. Keep your family close. Check in when you can. Show them love. Always give them time. There's no doubt in my mind that you will. But I just want to remind you, your job is not the hardest job in the Navy. It's your parents. It's your siblings. It's your loved ones. Because when you're doing your missions, when you're kicking ass, when you're taking names, and you're doing stuff, your family's here not knowing what you're doing, wondering, won't watch the news because of fear. check in with them, love on them, appreciate them. And I'll tell you, you know, one thing that we understand as service members is, you know, your subordinate leaders are a direct reflection of your leadership. And who you are today is a direct reflection of those who raised you, alongside of you, with you, under you as, you know, younger siblings, but most definitely your parents, grandparents, and those who led you in your home. So I charge you to remember that.
Yes, sir.
All right. With that, Representative Thomas, if you'd like to come up.
Okay. I don't know if you, I know the entire family came. Would you like to have at least the parents come up here with Caleb?
Is that all right with you?
Come up here. Do it right here.
Yeah.
Having never done this before, I'll just do what seems to be like common sense. Caleb Hazeltine, I'd like to present you with the American flag that was flown over the state capitol in Concord, New Hampshire, in honor of your exemplary performance and selection into a very specialized program, and for all that you stand for, I present you with the American flag. And by doing so, to prove that in fact he was flown over Concord, I have a certificate signed by the Governor of New Hampshire and myself. The State of New Hampshire, Office of the Governor, State House, Concord, New Hampshire. It is certified that this flag was flown over the New Hampshire State House in honor of Petty Chief Officer Caleb Hazeltine for his selection to the Advanced Technical Field Special Warfare Operator Program with the United States Navy. On Wednesday, the 11th day of September, in the year of our Lord, 2024, and of the independence of the United States of America, 248, signed Christopher T. Sununu, Governor, Douglas W. Thomas, New Hampshire State Representative. Congratulations.
All right, so if you want to come in, if we can do a picture with the council.
Absolutely.
Why don't we step down with them, if that's all right with the council?
I did feel to mention that the entire family is here.
Come on up.
Grandparents and everybody.
Chief, you want to come up too? All right, so we'll get in line, and Caleb, I'd like you to stand right in the middle.
Hold on here now. I need to start moving things.
Filter in. I mean, I think Caleb and Sean are. Bring it in a little closer.
All right, that just about fits. All right, excellent. So I'm going to take several, so everybody just kind of look up, smile as much as you can, and then we'll go with whatever's the best. All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Caleb.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Thomas and Caleb. Best wishes and Godspeed. So thank you for your service. All right, folks. If you guys would like to leave, you're more than free to take off. Because it gets really fun after this point. All right, so folks, we're in public comment. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for anyone who would like to address the council and the community. I ask that you please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. text you if you want.
Sure you have nothing to say tonight?
Right.
I'm going to give you something right now.
Thanks, Tony.
Tony DeFrancesco, 1 Cheshire. So I was on an extended ride the other day, and and I got to thinking, which is always usually very dangerous for me. So, and what I was thinking was, what a great way to spend a life, most of my adult life, in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Great schools, townside run great, close to the mountains, close to the seashore, close to Boston. I don't know what's in the West. I've never been there. I'm sure there's something out there that's good. But what a great place. What a great place to be. And so it was an epiphany and a celebratory moment for all of us who people like me who do however many thousands of hours a year on both the school side and the town side. Folks like you who volunteer for to help run the town. Staff who come out of nowhere and run things to the best of their ability, and what a great thing. And then I got to thinking, we spent a fair amount of time working on things from a previous election, where we started double, triple checking, making sure that we were videotaping everything. What we found out was that we were doing 80% or better already videotaping. Had to tighten up a few things, logistics to get some other stuff, and we're very close to 100%, as I understand it now, videotaping. And then I was thinking some more, and I was driving. That's really dangerous. So and then I said, well, what did we accomplish by doing that? And then I get to thinking, well, you know, the Nielsen report tells me how many people watch a football game on a Saturday. There's got to be a system out there that can tell us how many people are watching these meetings, how many people are watching them live, how many people are watching them after the live meetings because I believe they're all uploaded onto YouTube. Is that correct? And so I think that would be a pretty interesting exercise to see what we accomplished, if anything. And just to have those numbers for whatever reason to see, did we accomplish anything or not? Are we serving the community any better, the same, indifferent, whatever? But, Mr. Chair, I would like to request that you charge staff with that exercise to try and figure out how many people are watching live these meetings, how many people are watching after the fact, and see what we can come up with some kind of a report. As always, I'm always available to volunteer if hands, eyes, or computer knowledge are necessary. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Council, you fine with moving forward with seeing what data the town manager and staff can look into?
Yeah, if our department can access that data from Xfinity.
If we can access it, we'll supply it.
Perfect. All right, maybe publish it in the form of a memo.
Absolutely.
Thank
Happy
you.
to do it.
Anyone else for public comment? Good evening, sir.
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive. I heard what was just said, and I agree for the most part what was said. However, I think if we're concerned with whether the general public is paying attention, whether they're watching these meetings or not, I'm not sure exactly how you would do that, other than getting the word out to the general public and meeting with the general public, which the town manager, by the way, has done and is shown that he is interested and willing to do that, which I think is a very good move. By the way, we also have a number of state reps, Londonderry reps, here that also can be of assistance to get the word out, and a lot of them do. I'm not suggesting they don't. But I think getting together, having meetings, we've had meetings at the library with some of the state reps, which was open to the public. I think all of that is very important, and we should continue on that. We definitely need to try to include the general public in the decision-making process. That's kind of what this is all about. And so I appreciate what everybody does, and I think we should continue. I think we've made some great moves. We're looking at the master plan and to bring that up to date. We have the utility committee. We have the water subcommittee. We have a lot of things going on, and unfortunately, a lot of things cost money, and so we're getting into the budget season too. So we have a lot of decisions to make, and including what the general public thinks about these decisions. Absolutely, we need to include them however you think best of doing that. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ray. Anyone else from the public?
Jason Goldman, 150 Mammoth Road.
Good evening.
Good evening. Doing good. I'm looking forward to budget season.
So am I.
Yeah, I just want to say for Tony, we accomplished a lot last year. When we look at the High Range Road project, we have more knowledge on the school side of what people want to see. And again, looking forward to this budget season. There's lots to talk about. There's a traffic safety trust fund to talk about. There's Lions Hall, how to fix it, and other maintenance that we need to do to our town. Excuse me. So I kind of want to just make sure we're moving forward, not dwelling on the past too much, and moving forward in good faith to serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, one thing that I do appreciate that I think both forms of government do pretty well, and to give a nod at the town manager and staff, just with the hard work of putting up the recordings and having recordings and stuff. The public had spoken. I really think that great job at doing that. Being in town government for the past 6 years to date, I've seen us continuously improve, and I think that we'll always work on getting better. And I do appreciate, just for your awareness, the input from public, and I think that we have done during our budget workshop and budget season. The chair has always been one, previous chairs and me as well, when I was chair of the BudCom, have always encouraged public input. So my commitment is to continue to do that. So thank you for your comments.
Great to hear. And there's a lot of views on YouTube. You can see a little thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. All right, new business, primary election update. Town moderator Jonathan Kipp, as you make your way up, I wanted to make the public aware. So those who did come to the polls last Tuesday saw a seamless process, and that really is a nod to the hard work that both you and the clerk and your staff and volunteers put in, as well as the council and support with the town manager and his staff and the school board as well. Just the hard work that put in. So I want to say thank you, not just to you two, but all those that dedicated a good, healthy election. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much appreciated. On behalf of our entire election team, I'll pass along. I'll say thank you to you as well and the council and all those you mentioned, and I'll pass it along to the rest of the team. I'm sure they'll enjoy hearing it. So I invited Sherry to join us tonight. It's really a team effort among Sherry and me and then everybody else who's involved. So what we have tonight are just a few statistics from the election, a couple of observations that I made, and a very strong reminder, should you need it, that we get to do it all over again on November 5th, but it's going to be even bigger. So let's not lose that enthusiasm until we get through November. And I'm very proud of the work that our whole group did. And when I next gather with them, I'm going to remind them, and this quote I got from Mia Hamm, many have said it, it's a lot easier to get to be number one than to stay number one. And I consider us to be number one, but we have to continue to work hard to improve. And there are areas we can do that. So,
Thank you.
So thank you for the opportunity and for inviting us in tonight. We ended the day on Tuesday with 17,205 voters, which includes 79 same-day voter registrations. And again, in November, I expect we'll see even more. So
17,000 or 1,700?
17,205.
Thank you.
This was our first time using the Voting Works devices, machines, tabulators, call them what you will, that the council approved, and they worked flawlessly. 4,592 ballots were cast, and that includes 335 absentee ballots. And interestingly, and Chairman Franz, as you can attest, we spent close to an hour and a half, I think, recording 407 individual write-in votes across all the races. So that was more time-consuming than I had anticipated. It was also more write-in votes than I had anticipated. So we're thinking about ways to make some modifications to how we do that. But we are now required by state law to have those write-ins recorded on election night. So hopefully we can avoid a lengthy delay after the general election trying to record all those. But we'll see.
And Jonathan, too. A lot of it is Mickey Mouse, Tigger, Chris Sununu, people that, it really, and Jonathan, as he said, and you, Councillor Franz, were there an hour and a half extra that really was unnecessary. So if we could ask the citizens that, really think before you if you have a sincere write-in, please, by all means, put it down. And that's important, but it's most of them. And you can see the list, it's public, are really unnecessary. And cost our taxpayers more money, actually, and everyone having to stay late, or our police, our fire, everyone involved.
Thanks, Sherry. So we had heightened scrutiny at this election, which I think many of you councilors may be aware. At probably 8 o'clock in the morning, it seemed like 11 to me, but I'd already been there for 4 hours, so it was probably 8 o'clock in the morning. Erin Hennessy, our Deputy Secretary of State, arrived and presented Sherry and me with letters explaining that Londonderry had been randomly selected for an election machine audit. And the way that is structured, that process is structured, she was required to spend the entire day with us, which she did. And she offered us a lot of advice and information about how we run our election, and we offered her lots of advice as well. It was a very nice, pleasant give and take where we learned from each other. But she was there till the very end. And I can tell you that the audit of one of our machines was conducted on Wednesday, and it was deemed a successful audit, which means they found no discrepancies between our machine and the machine that the state uses for their high-speed audit. And then later in the day, roughly 3:15, Secretary of State David Scanlon arrived, and he was escorting Jen Easterly, who was the director of the Federal Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, otherwise known as CISA. And they selected Londonderry as their last stop. They visited 5 polling places throughout the day. They conducted a news conference in Londonderry. It was pre-planned. There were no cameras. It was strictly print media and broadcast media, radios. And each of those VIPs who arrived were very complimentary of our processes. They made several different comments from different angles, one of which was for our alert team. Wow, you have volunteers in the parking lot parking cars? Yes, in fact, we do. It's a community volunteer organization. They're very impressed. and that was but one example. And I'm convinced they selected, the Secretary of State and his team selected Londonderry for that last stop to bring our federal representative from the CISA agency because of his confidence in our strong record of running very efficient and effective elections in Londonderry. I'm not choosing to believe that it was because of our proximity to the airport and she had a late flight. So the point of all that is I'm very proud of the work we do, and I was glad to have those representatives come and be able to observe it. We welcome that. Let them see how we do it. We have nothing to hide. It's very transparent. And as you so stated, Chairman Franz, we're very proud of the good work that all of our team members do. And there are too many to thank individually. You mentioned several, especially, though, our election workers, our several school board members who arrived and worked. The school facility staff was amazing in terms of doing the setup in advance. So very, very thankful for that. Our alert team, and obviously our town administration and our council. Thank you so much for the support. Sherry?
No, just when you mentioned the school, it's always set up and they do a phenomenal job, but this election really shocked us. When we walked into the gym at 3 o'clock, it was perfect. And usually there's clinging and clanging and, things are being put together and we're doing, and Joe and his staff and, and they're fairly new at this process still. And it was a wow moment for all of us because it really just energized us too. So, and everyone along the way, but that was something unexpected because they are somewhat new to it, but our hats go off to them. It was amazing to see.
Most definitely.
Oh,
So
yeah,
happy to entertain any questions.
Council?
Seemed like a smooth day and looking forward to November.
Knock on wood. I agree. Looking forward to November. We're planning already.
November 5th.
Yep.
Already marked my calendar.
Thank you.
With the new machines, what was your observation on how those went? I know you talked a little bit about just the scanning and working with you at the end of the night firsthand, and seeing you have to interpret the handwriting and type it in for a more accurate official result. Do you have any summary regarding the machines or not?
The machines operated as expected, and we knew what to expect going in terms of the speed. And I think many voters and those working at the machines, Chairman Bob, for example, who spent the day at a machine, the ballots feed more slowly than our old AccuVote machines. That's going to be true with any machine that we decide to go with full time because of the optical scanning that takes place. So Voting Works, I think, is no different than their competitors in terms of the speed of the ballot. However, because of that, we're probably going to acquire additional machines for the November election so that we don't want lines of voters trying to cast their ballots. The other good news about the Voting Works machines, the results print on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. We don't get the adding machine type tapes that some of us then sit and manually input into a laptop. So that's a great time saver, and I think it makes a better presentation of the results as well. So that was one thing that really attracted us, and we looked forward to trying with the Voting Works machines, and that will remain the same for November.
Perfect.
With the 8.5 by 11s that get printed off, is there a way to combine all 4 machine tabulations instead of having all 4 machines printing out a separate sheet?
We're required to do both.
Okay.
We have to print a report for each machine
Yep.
and provide that to the Secretary of State, and then we do the combined result, which is our official Londonderry election results.
Right, so you guys had printed off like the preliminaries without the write-ins and everything at the very end of the night. You had provided those on the wall. Those preliminary numbers, are those able to be printed onto a single combined number compared to 4 separate sheets, or potentially more, depending upon how many machines we have?
Can it be done? Yes. The law requires us to post each individual machine, and it's a carryover. It's the equivalent of providing the tapes from each of the 4 machines, which cannot be combined. Many voters want to see those tapes in the new law. It's a new law this year, states that those individual machine results have to be posted within 60 minutes of the polls closing. That's not enough time to adjudicate all of the votes, the write-ins and the hand count ballots, combine all of those within 60 minutes.
Right.
So yes, the requirement is we post each machine individually.
Okay.
Could they be combined? Yes, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not really helpful because it's not election results. It's machine results.
True.
I think that night I learned a couple new words and phrases sitting with the Voting Works team. I think de-adjudicate or whatever. And a couple other things. So it was definitely a learning moment and experience for me.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. Chairman, because we did have 2 representatives from Voting Works, one of whom is the executive director of the organization, with us from 5 o'clock a.m. until we all went home at whatever time that was, midnight. So it was very helpful, and I was very pleased to see their commitment to providing just exceptional customer service.
Awesome. Anything else? Any final thoughts?
No.
All right.
No, it's just beautiful, though, to see everyone come together, the school, the council, Kirsten, driving that big van, which I regret I didn't get that picture at 1 o'clock in the morning.
That's okay. I'm comfortable with that.
And our town manager, Mike, the election team, the school, everyone has a hand in it. And I should mention Sam, too, and the custodial staff, because it's just such a beautiful thing that if we work together, miracles really happen, and that is to pull off what the town of Londonderry did and to be recognized as one of the leaders in elections. That's a credit to everyone in this room and people at home who come out to vote. So, it's really, we always have to keep that in mind, like what we can accomplish when it's positive and good energy. And
Is it safe to say, I believe what you're saying is we're better together?
I wish I'd said that. We are better together, and it's one big family, the town of Londonderry, no matter what we do and our differences. But boy, in that election from morning until night, there's such a positive energy. So thanks to everyone we might have forgotten and, everyone that makes it happen. It's pretty beautiful.
Awesome.
Even our restaurants get involved in so many different things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Good. A little
Great
clap
job.
there. Just one thing, our senior expo, I should have mentioned it during public comment, is coming up on Saturday, and a lot of hard work has been put forth over probably 40 vendors, and it's not just if you're a senior, if you have a senior neighbor or parent, so please come out and support the committee that's worked so hard. Jim Green is our fearless leader. 10 to 2 is when it'll run, so at the
And the
middle
location?
school. At middle school, so thank you so much, but just a little shout out for that too.
Perfect.
Lots of giveaways.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, folks, moving along the agenda, we're going to ask Kirsten Hildenen and Doug Cole to come up and talk about Old Home Day and the Funway Playground updates. Good evening.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. All right. Well, speaking of the community coming together to work miracles, Sherry, let's talk about Old Home Day. We are pleased to report that this year's Old Home Day was pretty much an unmitigated success. So starting off, as we know, we had all 4 days. We had no major incidents. We had no major safety incidents, no major security incidents, no major unhappy people. There was always a couple of minor things. And like Jonathan and Sherry said, we also both very much subscribe to the, if it's great, you can make it better. And so that's what we've already started working on for next year. This was the 125th anniversary of Old Home Day. So we were celebrating the past and the history of our community, and it starts off fittingly on Wednesday with the senior picnic and bingo and barbecue, and fitting way to honor the history of our community with some of the people who've seen substantial amounts of the past 125 years of history, which is pretty phenomenal. Alona Arndt of the Senior Center put this on. She did a phenomenal job. She collected more gift cards for bingo prizes than I thought humanly possible, and she kept us consistently updated. But together with Londonderry Senior Citizens, Inc., they put on a really phenomenal barbecue. The highlight was definitely the ice cream truck at the end. I've never seen a line form quite so quickly. Timeless Treats did a one very kindly donated, so it was a really phenomenal time. Also on Wednesday, you had the Beatles concert, the final concert of the year for concerts on the Common. And part of the reason I'm highlighting this is that there was almost 1,000 people on that Common. And I guarantee you that skipped ahead to the next one. Spoiler alert. Our public safety personnel made it feel like 90. Our police, our fire, our DPW, and the Arts Council, who runs this event so phenomenally, did an amazing job. Which brings us to Thursday, which was this. If there's a hiccup, go ahead.
If there was a hiccup, it was the color run. So we had a little rain, so we had to postpone it. Originally, we had 144 people pre-registered for that event, and we were anticipating more day of signups as well.
And that's a wrap.
Yep.
All right, you guys are done.
All right, you guys are done.
Yep. So but we ended up on the postponement. We did it the day before school started on the Monday, and we did get about a little over 50 people that did show up and run that event. LAFA was very accommodating. They actually came and opened their concession stand, so thank you to them. Our DJ, who did his services for free, still showed up. We were also, fire was there on site, as well as we had some volunteers that were able to help. So Kaylee Esposito and her family, as well as some of the Graves boys, and then we had the Rizzo family as well. So we were able to get it done. We were a little more shorthanded, but I think with the number of runners we had, it was still very doable and something we're looking to expand upon next year.
And to just leave it with Doug.
Okay, no. Sorry, I jumped you there. So then we had on Friday, we started off with the softball tournament between the 3 departments. So it was Town Hall, Fire, and then Police had 2 of their own teams, Team Ammo and Team Zeus. So we had so Police played each other first, so only one of them came out of there to enter into the championship game. And then the second game was Fire and Town Hall, which consisted of everybody from finance, IT, recreation counselors, and even John Trottier up in engineering was participating in that game. So we gave him a fight, put him into extra innings. Unfortunately, fell short there. I believe the 7th inning, which is 2 after where it was supposed to end. And then Fire went on to face Police in the championship and was mercy ruled pretty quickly. I did give Fire a hard time. I do think the Town Hall team could have scored at least 1 run. So if I'm going to throw a jab out there. But all in all, I thought it was successful. It was great to have families from not only members of each of those departments, but people that came by to check out what was going on over there. So again, potential to expand upon that next year. It was great to have those watching from members of the council as well as town manager and other members of the community. So thank you for all who participated.
And next year, the Police will be required to play the opposite hand of their dominant hand for the entire game. This is the only picture I'm putting up for Friday because this is the only picture that I had time to take on Friday. Friday was the food trucks and fireworks. We had a splendid time. I think I saw almost all of you there. It was one of the more phenomenal nights. That Friday night was really important to, I think, all of us because it really brings everybody together as a community to celebrate what makes us awesome. Not just people from our community, but people from all over the place. All the surrounding communities come because we do such a great job. And if you want, I'm going to call them out and they're not going to like it, but I'm going to call them out anyway. And if you want to see what real leadership looks like, it's your town council chair and your town manager helping Doug with the cleanup of getting all the trash thrown away at the end of the night at almost 11 o'clock, driving around, getting all those trash into the dumpsters. It was pretty phenomenal to see. And they did that so I could drive my dad back to his car. So that was even better. So I thank them for that. But everybody really pulls together for this. And then Saturday's just too huge to talk about the details, and I was asked to be brief. So I just wanted to highlight some of the phenomenal people in town, and I really love these pictures that just show town personnel and community members having a really, really phenomenal time. From the baby contest to the parade, to the booths on the Common, to the Valley Cemetery dedication, to the Boot Scoot and Boogie, everything was a blast. And I know we all had a blast too.
Kevin looks very happy.
Kevin looks very happy. Honestly, this is a great picture of literally everybody up there. And so I can, credit goes to Tara Koza for all of these. She did a phenomenal job taking them. And then the color run. And then I would be remiss if I didn't call out these 3 organizations. This year, Doug and I introduced a new tier of sponsorship, Premier Sponsorship. That's $2,500 in donation towards the event or in kind. St. Mary's Bank was the first person to jump on board. And as you know, when it comes to these things, having one organization sign up is really important to getting other ones sign up. So St. Mary's took the leap, and we are extraordinarily grateful for them. They sponsored the food truck and fireworks on Friday night. The Londonderry Lions Club also was a premier sponsor. They sponsored the Lions Den beer tent, which also ran on Friday night and Saturday night and was hugely successful. So we were really thrilled that they were able to work together well with all the organizations associated with the Legion. And then Wind Waste Innovations, if you remember from 2023, we had a little bit of a trash issue at the fireworks. Because of Wind Waste Innovations, we were able to solve that this year and create a little bit less burden on the school, which was phenomenal. And hope to even do it a little bit better next year. And then, again, I'm missing people here. I know I'm missing people here. So many of our town staff put in hours, paid and unpaid, on this. They volunteered their time. They stayed late. They worked overtime. They gave up the time with their families during one of the prime times of summer to do this. The people I call out here are some of our volunteers, the people who receive no financial compensation whatsoever for doing this. Steve Dente and the Rotarians for the parade, Kaylee Esposito for all of her really great ideas and Touch a Truck, Roger Filio for his help on Friday, Dan Gorn Ovation Theater for the stage, Linda Green and the Historical Society for the encampment, Ben and Mandy Harrison for the Lions Club and the baby contest, Frank Holdsworth and Cy Tebbets, Frank for standing up to Phil as he fought with him at the softball game, and Cy for calling him off. No, I'm just kidding. For both their job umpiring. Londonderry Alert, of course. Arts Council, Lions Club, Police Association, School District Senior Center, Town Council, all of you. The United Methodist Church for helping us with our always challenging parking situation, Mike O'Donnell and LAFA for stepping up to handle Kids Zone, and the Sons of the American Revolution. These are all groups that coordinated events or worked on the committee for hours and hours leading up to it. Any questions about Old Home Day?
Council? I will say I really enjoy calling out the bingo numbers on Wednesday night.
I'm sure Lona will be thrilled to have you all back next year.
Yes. I'd like to thank all the volunteers, and I'd like to highlight you both of you. So you're gonna throw something, I'll throw it back. The hours that you two put in to not having a good Old Home Day week, but having a great Old Home Day week was really off of the dedication and love that you have for the town of Londonderry. So I wanted to thank you both for what you did, and the school board as well, the district office, the town staff. I was, I always said, if I wanted someone in the foxhole, it'd be Mike Malaguti. And I thought I'd have him in an octagon. After seeing him sling those trash bags, I, second-guessed that a little bit. So,
Scrappy.
I don't think you'd fight fair. But thank you. I truly mean that. And phenomenal work. And we look forward to the great things will continue next year.
We've already had our first meeting.
All right.
And now I'm going to turn it right back over to Doug. Mike, could you please open the funway for more good things?
Yeah. So just briefly go over the. I know when we had met about Funway Playground, it was late May, and the council had suggested, had graciously dipped into the ARPA funds in order to start with some of these upgrades that were necessary for the playground. So, which included, this was going back to the original slide, the ground material, benches, irrigation and runoff, the overgrowth and fencing, and some of the climbers. So we were able to get right on that. Some of those things were already on our checklist to do, but and 60 yards of mulch had been actually delivered, surface material, around that meeting time. But we had 150 additional yards that were needed. As you can see, it came in 2 different truckloads, and we were fortunate to have a very generous resident who wants to remain anonymous go and spread that out throughout the playground, put it in smaller piles that we were able to spread throughout the volunteer day, which I'll touch on a little bit later, and I know I've mentioned it throughout the summer months, thanking all of our volunteers that were able to do that. But so in total, it's 210 total yards of surface material were added this year. That's something that it was much needed. It's not something that's going to be needed every year or even every other year. It'll be just the upkeep that's required going forward with that to stay at the minimal level for safety. Fencing was also added. Originally, we had talked about just doing the gates, looking at it in order to better tie it in, not only aesthetically, but also just with what was already there. We ended up replacing the entire fence, which included increasing and widening the double swing gate, which is down near the pathway. So that will allow for easier access when we do need to do maintenance in the future as well. Instead of dumping it over the side of the fence. So now we have that. We have double access to the playground with a closed gate leading towards the roadside, and then so it was about 120 total linear feet of additional fencing needed, and it looks very nice and sharp with the black too. So nice contrast with the new surface material as well.
That was a huge advancement, I got to say.
It was also something that Primex had called out that we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do this time around or not.
Right.
It was a safety issue with the gas in the fence.
Absolutely. Then there was the clearing of overgrowth. I know that was added additional thanks to Dave Wally and Public Works, kind of taking that by the helm and actually clearing out that space. So now we've got this beautiful open area that's been hydroseeded. The grass is starting to come in, and that's going to really add to an additional park feature to the playground. It's easier to see the playground, so from a safety viewpoint as well, and we'll have future plans for that kind of park area as well. It's also blocked off, and we're not having the issues with the student parking in that area anymore either. So a big shout out to them. Credit all goes to them for all the hard work they did and how quickly they did it, which was wonderful. And then we get to the equipment replacement and upgrades. So it was the yellow rocker, which didn't look anything like that, if you remember. It was missing 2 sides of it. I was surprised at how big it was when it was actually installed. And then we have 2 new climbers. So those were those hay bales that were there. They were deteriorating. We got those removed, and then they got these ones installed. So even they added new safety features climbing up to make sure that it does go with the equipment that was in place. All in all, I think it blends in well with what is there. I know I brought my kid already by to the playground, and he noticed the new things, and he's only 3, so that's a good sign. Hopefully others have noticed it as well and are enjoying it. So those upgrades have all been done, and safety-wise, we're back up to code on those things. We also added new signage, which wasn't there prior, so that's now installed there, so people can understand what the equipment's used for, just basic warnings. And then the bench repair, which was already on the docket to get done, but as you can see, Sid's working on it as well. Some of our volunteers at the volunteer day getting those slats all put in place, so those have all been upgraded as well. And just briefly going over kind of the short-term priority that we were doing with the costs that are there. So it was estimated with the actual. So benches are done. The inspection was done this prior meeting. And then the equipment, you can see what some of the total costs ended up being. There were some additional just from the meeting in May to when we installed them and got them delivered in July and August. Just inflation prices actually did go up on a couple of things. The fence and gate, we did do the entire thing, not just the fence, or sorry, not just the gate. We did the fence as well as the double swing, so that's why that number is a little bit higher. And then you can see the playground surfacing is right in line with what we were going for with the unspread and going with the volunteer day. So all in all, with the $20,000 allotted, we were pretty close to that number. The hydroseeding that was done, that did come out of our own general fund. That was an additional $750 just to get that area done. So, but all in all, we did it for all of those improvements for about $21,000 or so. So, which I think it's gonna help out in the long run. It's also bring us up to code with safety issues that were present as well.
I got to say, it's pretty impressive what you guys have been able to do with a short amount of money, but also with visually great improvements. And I've been seeing it across the board, whether it be other people telling me or through different Facebook comments about, oh my God, look how great this looks, and look at all the new improvements. And I got to say, it was pretty impressive with the volunteers that turned out on the mulch spreading day, and as well to have the volunteer who came out and helped spread it before we got out there, because I was expecting to spend 8-9 hours out there spreading the mulch in wheelbarrows all throughout the day. I mean, that was a huge advantage. I think we got it done in
45 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. 45
That's what
minutes.
happens when you have the football team
That
show
helped.
up and help out
That
as
helps
well.
too, but having those piles spread out into little piles across the way, that was a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And I really got to say, it really cleans up the whole area and makes it look a lot more shining across the town.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate hearing that. I know our volunteers and staff would as well. So, a lot of work went into that, and it does. It's nice. You stand there in the middle, and it's something beautiful to have here in town, considering it's the only true town owned and operated playground. So, it's important to take care of it. So, which gets on to long-term priorities, I guess. So these are things we will do looking forward in the future. Annually, the Primex, so we'll get that inspected annually. We'll do staff inspections. We've been doing that as we've been going along, as well as cleaning up things that have reared their head, even including just spreading out some of the mulch that gets displaced due to weather. We got annual equipment we're going to look at. So we've replaced some pieces. Obviously, it's very expensive to do, so something we've got to figure out how we're going to do that with our maintenance funds. And then addressing drainage, that was on there. That's something that'll help with the displacement of the surface material, but that's something we'll work with engineering and public works to see how we can better do that. And that's definitely down the road a bit, but just how do we mitigate some of those issues? And then, as I mentioned, the surface material, that's probably every 2 to 3 years. So, and it won't need to be 210 yards every single time. It'll be smaller, 50, 60 yards displacement. So volunteer days will be much more manageable, if we have those in the future for those that do come out to assist. So we can cut it down to maybe 15 minutes if we have the football team there.
But it might be more of a precise landing of the mulch instead of all over.
Yeah, it'll be typically underneath the actual playground equipment.
You can stage a tournament between the police and the football team.
Ooh, perfect. And then lastly, it's just I had some photos of the volunteer day so just thanking everybody that was there. We got the great group photo there. Again, as Sean said, about 45 minutes, so it was quick. And it was just it really spruced up the area and kind of got kick-started the whole summer with all the improvements that did occur after that. So big thank you to everybody that made it. Lots of different faces, lots of different groups, and the council members as well that were able to attend. Thank you.
All right.
Any questions on anything?
Thank you, Doug.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great work.
All right, update the sewer facilities plan presentation. Mr. Mike Malagudi and Bob Carey.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for your attention as we turn to a somewhat drier topic. And I will note that John Chartier, the engineering director, is here as well. One thing I wanted to just briefly reflect on for a moment before we get into the details here is just how proud I am of the town staff who, really over the last 2 years, we've never been running leaner as a town staff with open positions that we're struggling to fill like a lot of other municipalities and employers across the state and the country. But during this period of unprecedented labor market forces, one of the things that we've really started to do is to lean into this long-term planning that it is easy to put on the shelf when there are fires to put out. And that is the case with regard to the master plan. It is the case with regard to the sewer facilities plan that you'll hear about in a moment. We're starting to work on the planning board regulations. We're looking at the zoning ordinance. And we are doing another thing that you'll hear about tonight, adopting a 91A policy. So while we are keeping the trains running and doing the everyday business of the town, I'm really proud that the town staff are also doing this long-term planning that really should inform and guide our day-to-day work. And the sewer facilities plan, which has a similar vintage to the comprehensive master plan in terms of when it was last updated, is a prime example of that. It's an important document. Bob and John have done a ton of work on it over the past I'm going to say 10 years, and it's ready for prime time. It went to the Utilities Committee before it came here tonight, and I will let Bob and John speak to that.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hold on.
For coming.
Mr. Town Manager, are you able to put the presentation onto the screen for everyone here and at home?
There we go. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Appreciate the opportunity. As Town Manager indicated, this has been a works in progress for quite a while, and I would consider it as really a housekeeping issue. A lot rides on the results of what we do with this plan. As you can see, this is a very tattered copy of the 05 plan right here, and you can see it gets utilized quite a bit. This is the new revised document that is basically ready for print. We just wanted to bring it forth to the Utilities Committee and also to you folks. I'm going to give you a very brief description. We're talking about hundreds of hours of effort and 120 pages. I'm going to try and summarize it in about 10 minutes, so bear with me. The background was really simple. There was a facility plan. We call that just a master planning of the sewer system back in the 70s. There was another one that was done. This is the one I held up in my hand. This is from 2005. That was a very extensive, comprehensive plan where, and it was used as a guideline for years as far as where development would occur and where it would not, because it just wasn't practical. This update that we're talking about has been necessary for a while because we wanted to bring it up to speed with what the conditions are out there right now as far as the development areas, as far as the needs for the sewer facility. Next slide, Mike. Thank you. The thing I wanted to really emphasize here, though, what we did, is that the sewer-related costs are drawn from, no sewer-related costs are drawn from the general fund. So all sewer-related costs are drawn from a sewer enterprise fund, which is a separate entity, which has no impact whatsoever on the tax rate. So all the money we're talking about at this session right here does not affect the taxpayer at all. It's all done, paid for by two sources. One is the ratepayers who pay a quarterly sewer bill, and the second is the sewer access fee, which we're going to dive into tonight. That's where developers pay a one-time fee, and it's used to design. And it's based on the one-time fee is based on a design flow that they are going to contribute with that project to the sewer. Both sources of income need some periodic review. The ratepayers' contribution is pretty straightforward because we bill quarterly, so we have a chance to look every quarter, are we bringing in enough money to cover the costs of the operation and maintenance of the sewer. The second one, though, the sewer access fee contribution relies on a much more complicated, somewhat unpredictable, with many variables, and it can change over time, as we've changed over time, as we discussed. So we need to take into consideration development since the 2005 report. We need to evaluate the existing and future wastewater needs. Most importantly, we need to assure the accuracy of the access fee determination process, which we'll get into detail on, and that will assure that adequate funding is collected to address the upgrade needs that we need to do. So the next slide is a two-tiered system which we adopted back in the 2005 report and plan. And what it did, it took into account a number of existing buildings, residences and other buildings, possibly small businesses, that were in existence before a sewer line went by them. And it just did not seem fair to charge them the same access fee, since they may have put a lot of money into existing septic systems. There were some almost agreements back then with certain areas that they were guaranteed a price of $500 a piece for a connection fee. So the council at that time took that all into account, and we came up with what we call this two-tiered system, where there are areas where if your house or your business is existing already and a sewer goes by and you are chosen to select, or you choose to select to connect to it, you get the reduced rate. And we intended to keep that plan as we move forward with this update. There's still quite a few situations where there's existing buildings that eventually may go on sewer at some point, and they will be, we felt it only right that they still have this option for the reduced rate. So the background on the methods and the guidelines, basically we work continuously with our sub-consultant, Wright Pierce Engineers, using the 05 report or plan as a reference point. We looked at future wastewater needs based on the 2013 Comprehensive Master Plan, but also numerous meetings with developers, town staff, and consultants, and our consultant through December 31st of 23. That's when we drew the line and said, all right, we've got to pull it all together at this point. We had enough of the variables resolved, which I'll get into in a little bit too, and we said it's time to get this thing up and running and see where we really are. The updates we identified, and a couple of premises are the town sewer is really to serve industrial and commercial areas, but also, when possible, high-density new residential growth areas. And the reason for the industrial and commercial is that's where the tax base would benefit from that type of a development. It is never been and is not intended that we would pay to extend the sewer into areas of existing subdivisions with lots of 1 acre or larger. That just was not part of it. The next slide shows, it's one of two slides that just gives you a quick glimpse of the areas that were considered growth areas back in 2005. I know it's a little hard to see. The red lines in there are the sewer lines that are in place. The different colored blocks are the development areas. Each one of them has obviously a unique name. And a lot of work has been done on that. In this area of town, you're looking at the area that flows to Manchester. All the flow in this area would go to Manchester. The new growth area since 2005, there's several areas up in the vicinity of Mammoth Road that near the intersections of Grenierfield Road and also Page Road that are actively beginning to come on board. There's an area we call Lorden Commons, which is off of East Derry Road, which has over 100 houses in it now. And then the Wallace Farms phases, which are on Perkins Road near the intersection with Rockingham Road. These were really not even thought of back in 05. These have come up from there. The next slide, which is part 2, it's really just sliding down on the map. And you can see that area in the kind of the middle, that's actually, we're right at where it says Area F. That's where we're sitting right now. Our flow, believe it or not, when you use the sink, goes all the way up that map through the other one, and it goes to Manchester. Everything to the right of it is the area that flows to Derry. Okay, we have two destinations for our sewage. It either goes up to Manchester or it goes to Derry.
Bob, I've got a quick question for you. The coloring of the lines, so I see the red lines. Can you help me understand the yellow
Yep, certainly.
dotted black, please?
The yellow dotted lines are proposed sewer lines that still need to be built. Okay, so the red ones are built. Thank you for the question. The red ones are built. The yellow lines are proposed sewer lines or pressure pipes that need to be built. And there's no rhyme or reason really to the color of the study areas or the growth areas themselves. It was just to provide contrast between the borders of one or the other.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. The new areas in this area of Part 2 going to Derry really is the area of Woodmont Common that goes to basically exit 4A on the east side of I-93, and also Woodmont Commons West, which is to the west, obviously, to the west side of I-93. Again, only a little bit of 18, which is the east side, was even thought of back when this plan was created in 2005. So those are the new areas there. Next slide, please. Significant changes from 05, that's what we've been talking about. Some of those areas that you saw, the little colored areas with the numbers or whatever, have been completely developed, and those are shown on the left side of the screen. and it includes Mill Pond, up right on the border of Manchester, Whitmore Place and Trail Havens Estates, Crestview, the Nevins. Those are all completely developed since '05. The ones that the list on the right side, those are areas that some work has been done in them, but there's still remaining areas that need to be worked on. And really the purpose of the slide is to say a lot was done. A lot has been done as far as the developing. The next page shows that we've had significant investment in the town infrastructure during this period of time. That's been purchased basically by the developers and access fees that have been collected from the developers. We've basically have built 4 brand new pump stations, 2 of them in areas that did not have any sewer capacity before, and 2 that were replacing pump stations that had reached their limit as far as capacity and just plain old age. So we have updated that. We have worked on numerous phases of what we call the South Londonderry Interceptor, which is bringing sewer service up 102 in what we call the 102 corridor area there. That's been several inceptions of that. As you can see, it was some work was done in between 2004 and 15, and then some more in 2019. And the town also took over a section of Mill Pond, that northernmost area, back in 2003. It was a private system, and the very nice thing about that was that we made very sure that it was in very good condition before we even considered taking it over. The department insisted that every inch of pipe was cameraed with a video camera, and we went through it, looked at it with a third-party facility or company that specializes in assessing this type of work, and we didn't pay a dime for it. So that was a good deal.
So it wasn't a waste.
Not at all. It was a bonus. So the next page, access fee determination. So here we go. So what did we have to do? We had to look at every area again and assess the changes that had occurred. We developed projected flows for all the new areas that weren't included in '05 because they didn't exist. We did detailed summaries, painstaking detailed summaries of each of these areas, basically identifying the growth area that was remaining, the acreage, projected flows, types of buildings, numbers of buildings, population, and we came up with this graphic that you see on the right, which is essentially the summary of that all that work. Okay, we basically plugged in the numbers and turned the crank. I wish it was that simple, but it was a lot of work to get to that point. And the calling out those numbers that you can't quite make out, but they're in this, believe it or not, they're in this report. Basically, I'm going to use round numbers on this, but basically it was about $12 million was cost that we were going to have to plan for treatment of the wastewater that was developed and basically originating from these new developments. And then in addition to that, there was about $7.5 million of construction work that was going to be needed to facilitate this and extend out where it needed to be for providing these services. So you add that up, it's $19.5 million. Remember the special conditions that we made with the existing users. That kind of, they're in their own little category of how they're charged. So we needed to subtract that $571,000 out of that total. Now we know the total cost. We also knew that the total flow originating from this additional development would be about 1.5 million gallons. Cost per gallon equals $12.24 for a new, what would be potentially the new sewer access fee. Next slide, please. Now, going back to the slide that we showed you very briefly before, we're proposing on the bottom section of this that you can see the residential unit that's been in place for quite a while. The cost per residential unit is $3,467, and that's based on an access rate, if you will, of $16.51. I know that number like I say it in my sleep because I say it so much. The good news we really believe is that can be reduced now to an access fee rate of $12.24, which translates to a cost per residential unit of $2,570. So almost $1,000 less for a homeowner or developer per residential unit. And basically that's the presentation. I hope I didn't lose anybody. I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep. But it's basically, at this point, it appears it's very good news. It appears that the time is now to basically take advantage of what the numbers are showing us and possibly reduce the sewer access fee rate. And with that,
so again, as Bob has indicated, there was lots of work that was done by the town, both on the sewer infrastructure since 2005. Again, those 4 pump stations, a lot of rebuilding of pump stations, improvements, extending sewer lines. So that's why, again, that rate per gallon has dropped pretty significantly as well, from $16 to $12. Correct. Lots of work, again, and there is a lot of work that's put together with the actual plan itself, as Bob says, the analysis and the plugging and chugging, looking at what has been developed, again, from 2005, and again, going through each of those areas, what has changed, what we have had kind of forecasted back in 2005 and prior to what actually exists today. Those numbers decrease, they increase. As Bob indicates, some of our original never took into account McGregor's Cut, Wallace Farms. There's a number of locations that we didn't see it in our crystal ball back then. So, again, as far as the next steps, we would ask if the council is amenable to it, to adopt this update to the facilities plan this evening. We would be coming back in the future for a hearing to change the actual rate in the ordinance from the $16 to the $12, and that'll be coming, so we'll be coming back for that public hearing.
One thing
a vote or a consensus?
A vote would be appreciated. One thing I would just note is that, as I alluded to earlier, it went to the Utilities Committee, a subcommittee that is focused on sewer and solid waste. And I want to accurately capture what the Utilities Committee says, that the subcommittee unanimously concurred that the updated plan was of merit and that the action steps over the next 5 to 10 years detailed therein were worthy of both my and the town council's favorable consideration.
Thank you. Any comment from the council?
A question or two. So say, for example, if you live in an apartment building, will you be charged this rate on a per apartment, or will the people who own the apartment buildings get that bill on a yearly or quarterly basis and then distribute that out to the apartment owners?
So first, Ted, it comes down to the access. So again, it would be the
12.24 per gallon.
Or again, per the residential unit. So for instance, residential unit, an apartment building with 10 units in it, 10 residential units, they'd get an invoice for $25,000. 70, in round numbers. So that's.
Oh, it's only a one-time charge.
So again, so that's the access.
Excuse me, one-time charge period, or one-time charge per quarter, a year?
No. Good question. So again, give it a shot.
So the access fee is a one-time charge when you are proposing to connect to the sewer. Okay, it's a one-time charge you pay. After that, it was the other thing I glanced over very quickly, which is the quarterly user fee, which right now is $96 per quarter per residential unit. Okay, so if you're a single-family house on sewer, you get charged $96 per quarter. If the apartment has 10 units in it, somebody gets the bill. Usually it's the landlord. In that case, it would be $960 per quarter.
And that'll be then distributed.
That's the recurring costs, which, by the way, I always monitor on the dashboard that the state puts out. They compare the rates user rates for towns and municipalities within the state, and Londonderry consistently comes in on the low end. So we're very proud of that too. So yeah, the two costs then are your quarterly user rate, but if and whenever you had to connect to the sewer, and it was a new facility that you built, there would be an access fee based on, for residences, it would be how many residential units are in there. If it's an industry or whatever, then we go back to that $12.24 per gallon. They may have a design flow, for instance, of 5,000 gallons. That might be what's
Gotcha.
determined. For
I see
that.
what you mean.
They paid a one-time fee to that to get into the system, and then after that, they paid their quarterly bill based on their usage.
We use the term with your access. You're purchasing past, present, and future. You're buying into the system. That's how Bob and I try to explain it to people. As you know, when they say, "Well, what does that access fee buy me?" Buying past, present, and future.
Yeah, another way to say it, you're guaranteeing that you will have sewer service for the rest of your facility's life.
I take it, do we have some sort of device that's installed on buildings to calculate their gallons per day, or how is that being calculated for people?
So an industrial or commercial, it's by their water usage. So we'll get their water usage from Manchester Water, Pennachuck, or the town of Derry.
Gotcha.
So but a residential, again, it's a flat rate, $96 a quarter.
And so I guess you can kind of equate it from the water usage to then the sewer, because, you know, water is different, you know, compared to sewer going down, you know what I mean? Is
You
that-
guys,
are
have
equating
a
that?
calculation to, to figure
yeah.
that out.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so with that, I'll accept the motion to adopt the updated sewer facilities plan as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ron, a second. Second from Sean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes in the affirmative. Any opposed? Motion passes. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Great presentation.
Thank you, guys.
All right, resolution 2024-24, an amendment to Londonderry stormwater regulations. Mr. Town Manager.
This is a first reading, Mr. Chair. My apologies for not noting it as such.
All right, so with that, I'll accept the motion to waive the first reading.
So moved.
I have a first from Ted. Second from Sean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please note in the minutes that Ron, do we say to abstain? He just stepped out.
Yeah, we're left the meeting. I don't think it's an abstention if you don't
do anything.
No, it will be
All right,
3-0-0.
Yeah.
Okay, 3-0-0.
Yeah.
All right, chair votes in the affirmative. Resolution 2024-24, first reading is waived. Right away, say that word?
Acquisitions.
Acquisitions, thank you, for Stonehenge Road and Route 28 Traffic Circle Project. Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you just bear with me while I bring this up. Okay. As the council knows and the public know, there have been lengthy discussions and consideration of traffic infrastructure improvements at the intersection of Stonehenge Road and New Hampshire Route 28. This is anybody who lives in this area will immediately know that this is one of the worst intersections in town. This was on the 10-year plan for a number of years, and the town negotiated with DOT a cost-sharing arrangement whereby the town previously appropriated close to $1 million, I think, for this project. The state is essentially guaranteeing the project. So the balance of the project plus any increase that may come is going to be paid for by the state. This was deliberated on and acted on by the town council previously. There was I believe a public informational hearing here where a commission appointed by the governor and council ultimately voted to proceed with the traffic circle concept. you can see with most projects like this, an early phase of the project, but a phase that forecasts that we're getting close to this project actually getting underway in earnest, is right-of-way acquisitions. And you can see a very small area highlighted in green here that is known as parcel number 8. And this actually comprises 0.05 acres of property. The state right-of-way title bureau believes that the town of Londonderry has title to this very small portion of land, notwithstanding the fact that our GIS records do not correspond with that.
Mike, where does it show that on the map?
Yep. You can see
that triangle?
It's that triangle that is literally less than 1/10 of an acre.
Thank you.
The state has commenced the process that may result in an eminent domain taking of this property, but there's the option to agree with them in order to expedite completion of this project that we essentially aren't going to contest any kind of eminent domain proceeding that's coming down the road. The state has that absolute right to take the property by eminent domain. The proceeding really would just be a function of what is the just compensation. Mm-hmm. So here we have an offer of compensation for parcel 8 of $1,000, and as I said, it will allow the construction project to move forward. At the same time, Mr. Vice Chair and Mr. Chair, we have parcel number 11, which is just as small, actually smaller, 0.03 acres. And you can see it is on the southerly side of 28 here, highlighted in green, and the offer of compensation on this one is $740. So the decision that is before the town council is whether to approve these takings, or what will become takings if, bless you, if the town is not agreeable to expediting the process. You will recall that we went through, I would say 2 years ago, a similar exercise with regard to the Exit 4A interchange area. There were takings of town property of multiple parcels that took place at that time, and the town, under similar circumstances, voted to proceed cooperatively with the state. That is the matter that is before the council tonight. A yes would be to agree to expedite this process and to deed these properties over to the state. A no would be we're going to go through the eminent domain process and fight about what the property is really worth.
Questions from the council?
Just a quick question, Mike. Do you feel like those are appropriate amounts of money for that property?
Yes. It is questionable whether we actually own these parcels of property. The title to these properties can get very murky, and it's a good question. It's a fair question, but I think that where the state let's put it this way: we're not carrying these properties as town-owned properties in our records right now. Sometime in the distant past, I think that the state feels that there's an arguable claim to ownership, and so I think, given all that uncertainty and given just how minuscule these parcels are, I do think it's a fair offer.
Fair enough.
Anyone else? All right. With that, I'll accept the motion to authorize the town manager to execute an agreement with the state of New Hampshire for the aforementioned properties on Stonehenge Road and 28.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Ted, a second from Ron. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Phase 7, rail trail funding discussion. Mr. TM.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if you'll bear with me a minute while I get this one
No worries
teed
at all.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm very pleased to announce that the town applied for late last year. Late last year, and has been awarded $422,000 by way of a congestion mitigation and air quality grant. That's a federal grant that is administered by the state to complete Phase 7 of the Londonderry Rail Trail. And I just want to orient everyone to what we're talking about here. Phase 6 is the second to last phase of the rail trail that is moving forward up by the airport. That is in the works, and construction will begin in the reasonably foreseeable future.
This would connect the current termination where it is on, is that Perimeter Road?
That's correct, up to the Manchester line. That's exactly right, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
What we are talking about with Phase 6 is really the missing piece of the south end of the Londonderry Rail Trail that runs from the Derry town line up to Seasons Lane and Coateville Lane. It's approximately 0.6 miles. As I said, right down to the Derry line and the doorstep of Woodmont Commons. So this is critical to complete this phase of the rail trail in order to connect really the southern part of the New Hampshire Rail Trail that runs from the state line up to up to Derry, and then to connect it in with the Londonderry Rail Trail, the Manchester Rail Trail, and ultimately points north. So this work is going to cost a good chunk of money. It's something that we've applied for grants for in the past, and it was only this past year that we were successful in being awarded $422,000. This grant really is focused on the rail trail, not necessarily for recreation, but for commuters. And I think that one of the things I would point to is you're going to have a mixed-use area, the Exit 4A area that's getting developed, and people are hopefully going to access the rail trail during the better weather to go north and south to work, to the store, what have you. And so that's why we were awarded this money. The ask tonight is that $422,000 is not going to complete this project. And we are looking at when the project was last costed out by the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, working with its engineering consultant. That was in October of 2022. We were looking at $150,000 worth of engineering work. This is a grant that requires a state, a local match of 20%, and it is a reimbursement grant. So in speaking with the state after this grant was awarded, we identified the need to do this engineering work. There's certainly enough work here to be done that, look, to get this project off the ground and then to make sure that we have enough money down the road to fund the actual construction work. Getting a jump start on this engineering work would really get this project off the ground. We also happen to have $146,245.68 left in unallocated ARPA funding. And as a reminder, that money has to go back to the federal government if it is not obligated by December 31st, 2024. So the suggestion is that allocating all of that or a smaller portion of that to the engineering work would not only make good sense because it will prevent us from having to send that money back if we can't find another purpose for it, but it would get this project off the ground and ultimately contribute to a successful project. So the council can say, yes, we'd like to allocate all of the rest of the ARPA money to this project. The council can say, that's a nice idea. Let's go with 100,000, 50,000, something less. Or the council could say, no, we're going to look at other options for this ARPA money, which is certainly an option, although we need to act fast.
So just questions to clarify. So I believe I hear what you're saying is you're looking to have a consensus from the council to proceed with the engineering work to review and investigate the total cost of what it would be to extend that south portion, south of 28 into Derry.
Correct.
How did we previously pay for how did we previously pay for extensions of the rail trail?
So my understanding is it has been a combination of fundraising, although I can't speak to how much fundraising Londonderry Trailways has done. I think that they do a lot of fundraising for maintenance. I suspect that when we're talking about hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars here, I suspect that fundraising has not historically comprised a major part of these infrastructure costs, but rather maintenance costs. I could stand to be corrected on that because this was before my time. But I can tell you that we funded at least one phase through a TAP grant, and I believe we raised money through town meeting for this at least once, if not multiple times. So what we're trying to do here is to secure and really put to good use this $422,000 and not have to go to the taxpayers and ask for an additional appropriation.
Okay, so $422,000 is the grant. $146,245 and how many cents?
68 cents.
68 cents would be in addition to that grant for the engineer work. Any question? Is that correct?
That's correct. And just for reference, under that cost estimate from late 2022, there was at least $641,000 worth of work to do. So I say educated guess. It's not a guess. It's I think based on everything that we've seen with regard to construction and engineering costs and building costs, $150,000 worth of engineering work in 2022 is not $150,000 today, which is a long way of saying that I'm confident that we can put this money to a good purpose and that we're not going to end up coming up short and having to send this money back to the federal government, if that makes sense.
What is the anticipation timeline for completion of the engineer's report?
That is a good question. I don't have an answer to that. But the legal answer is it has to be expended by the end of 2026. I suspect it'll be done far in advance of that.
So is it fair to say that the likeliness of this being completed before we enter into November's budget season is unlikely?
I can tell you the engineering, the design work, and that's important. We have a 2-page cost estimate that VHB did 2 years ago. This is really the process of designing the actual, bridges, pavement. There's soil remediation that has to take place here because these soils, after sitting under a rail bed for so many years, are a little bit of a problem. And so that's part of it as well, developing a plan for that. That's going to take a significant amount of time beyond November, I can confidently say.
Okay. Is a signalized intersection at 28 and the rail trail crossing in consideration? Is that something the state would obviously?
I think that is something that the state would have primary jurisdiction over. Yeah. I think that is a challenging area to cross. There's no question about that. I think it's a little less challenging than the signalized area by the daycare north of there. But that's certainly something that we should look at. It is not part of the $641,000 that I referenced, and I would have to do more research into the signalized intersection, near the North School. What brought that about? Was that part of the construction or extension of that rail trail segment, or did it come later? But that's something that we could always we should look at, and we can look at as we go forward.
Thank you, Council.
Mike, there's enough funds in ARPA to cover our 20%?
So the way that this works is it is a reimbursement grant, and one of the things is so that let me take a step back because that's an excellent question. As soon as I got this letter, I called up the state and I asked them. I said, "Hey, can we use the ARPA money to cover our 20%?" And they said, "Well, there's some rules about supplementing federal money with federal money or matching federal money with federal money." But they said, take a step back. And when you look at this from a practical standpoint, there's enough work to be done here that it's sort of a moot point because we have to do this engineering work. The number was $641,000 in 2022. It's grown, and so the answer is no. We can't use the ARPA money to supplement this federal grant. But that being said, this is a reimbursement grant. We are fortunate to have a healthy fund balance and a healthy cash flow that will allow us to, accommodate that. Also, potentially identifying other sources along the way that do not potentially have restrictions on supplementing federal with federal. So, much as we did with the Lancaster Drive project, which was a reimbursement grant as well. So the answer is no. We can't use the 150 to supplement or to constitute our match. I asked the exact same question, but we're going to have to do this work anyway, and we can't access the $422,000 unless we do this work, and it seems to be a perfect use of ARPA money, which is designed for infrastructure projects like this.
So in the future, the 20% we'd have to put on a warrant article?
Have to put it on a warrant article or find a grant or another source of funding for it. Correct. Yep.
Fine with that.
Or fundraising, what have you. Different options.
Anything else from the council?
Sounds fine to me.
All right. Do I have a consensus from the council to authorize the expenditure of $146,245.68 of the ARPA funds towards this project? Yes.
So moved.
You don't need a motion. Just a consensus.
Consensus. Yeah. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm sure Woodmont's happy to hear that they don't have to.
Yes, and actually, my thanks to Woodmont because we were able to negotiate a license agreement with Woodmont to secure the rail trail through the Exit 4A area. I think it'll be a really nice supplement to that mixed use portion of the project.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Order 2024-11, expenditure of reclamation trust funds. Reclamation. Big words tonight. Gentlemen, good evening again.
Good evening. John Trotter, Director of Engineering and Environmental Services. Gentlemen, I'm here this evening to request the release of $18,638 from the Reclamation Trust Fund for recycling carts and parts, basically. It's to, again, some of our carts that are out there, they're vintage about 2009, so they're getting up there in age. It's to replace some of the carts, replace some of the parts to the carts, so again, just maintaining our inventory.
All right. Question from council?
Does this come from town citizens saying, hey, there's something wrong with my cart?
Pretty much it.
How often do you find people are reporting in?
A couple of weeks, Ted.
Good time.
All right. Any other questions? All right. With that, I'll accept a motion to adopt Order 2024-11.
So moved.
I have a motion from, I heard Ron first. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Ted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you very much. Ordinance 2024-09, request to rezone 42 Ash Street, which is tax map 10, lot 45, from I'm tongue-tied tonight. Agricultural residential AR1 to industrial 1. First reading. With that, I'll accept the motion to waive first reading.
So moved.
I have a motion from Sean, a second from Ron. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. Ordinance 2024-10, an update to Title II Traffic Safety Code regulating Chapter 4 speed limits, trucking regulations. First reading. Do I have a motion to waive first reading?
So moved.
Second. A motion from Ted and a second from Ron. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. First reading waived. Discussion of possible legislative changes that could be proposed. So there have been some discussion during the last council meeting regarding some legislative suggestions, or looking for some legislative suggestions. And we had, being that Ron is a sitting representative up at the state, asked him to prepare a discussion for that in partnership with the town manager. So with that, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, sir. So possible state legislative solutions to growth, traffic, planning, and land use. The concerns in Londonderry regarding growth, traffic, planning, and land use are factors that we are all dealing with every day. One of the possible solutions is to look at a way that other towns deal with these same issues. I'm looking at forming a committee with Rockingham County. This committee would look at best practices among communities in Rockingham County. We could learn from other towns that deal with similar issues, how they deal with the issues differently, similarly, or how maybe they have a more productive way that they deal with their issues. This committee would focus specifically on areas of concern, to take a deep dive into areas of how to address them. We all want local control. We don't want the state to take over. We all agree on that. So we don't want the state telling us how to run our town. So this committee would allow us to learn more from our fellow towns, our fellow members, planning committees, planning boards, select boards, on how they deal with specific laws and regulations, and anything that needs to be changed or repealed can be presented to this committee and they could review it. We may find in the end that there is no action needed at the state level. We may find that all of our issues we can handle with the current laws we already have, but this committee would be presented with these issues, specific task to do these things as a community, as a kind of as a county, to figure out how to solve these problems together and use the best practices. And as far as local controls, Mike has been researching some of those local controls, and he's going to present a few local controls that we have right now that we can use today.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn, and my thanks to you for your leadership in this area and for some good conversations around this. I think that this is something that I've been thinking a lot about over the last 6 months, because I think we all hear a lot of the same feedback over and over and over. And if I had to sort of rank the issues that I hear most about in terms of how often I hear about it, traffic has to be right up there. And so I think what we're talking about here is, looking at the tools that we have in our toolbox, not necessarily to stop growth or to stop development. That's certainly not, I don't think, what anybody's talking about, but to get a little bit more control over the impacts, or to address the impacts of all of that growth and all of that development, but also to take a look at the, sort of the complexion of that development and see if there are different land use, zoning, and planning tools that we can use to affect that. And I've done some some research about this, getting a little bit down in the weeds, reviewing other municipality zoning amendments. After talking with Councillor Dunn, talking with others, including the Planning Board and the Master Plan Committee chairs, and I've got a pretty good list of potential options that I'd like to talk more about at the next meeting. I think that we had discussed keeping this item on the agenda for discussion, given its importance. Assuming that is agreeable to you, Mr. Chair, to allow that full discussion to take place. I have corresponded with the chairs of the Planning Board and the Master Plan Committee, and I think they plan to be in attendance. These are issues that I've been talking about with them for a while going back, and I think that what I'm confident that I can present the community and the council with some options, and the Planning Board with some options, not only that we can use to address some of these issues, but also that intersect with the work that the Master Plan Committee is doing, because we are working full steam ahead on that. I think that I think there's general agreement that we shouldn't just work on the master plan while we put actual regulatory changes on hold. I think that we've discussed, and I think that there's agreement that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and so. I plan to present very detailed information about this at the next meeting. Again, I thank you, Councillor Dunn, and all of the councillors. I can't think of a councillor who I haven't had a recent conversation about land use with. This is something that matters to our community. There's a lot of room for input. There's a lot of room for agreement and disagreement. But I couldn't be happier from where I sit about how we're really starting to wrestle in earnest with some of these issues that are so important to our constituents. So with that, Mr. Chair, Councillor Dunn, thank you, and I look forward to addressing this more next week.
All right. So sounds like early stages, but we have a course on which way to go, and we'll be presented with more conversation and input at the next meeting, which is the 23rd of this month.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
From the council? All right, thank you. With that, I'll open real quick. Thank you, Councillor Dunn and Mr. Town Manager. With that, I'll accept the motion to open public hearing.
So moved.
A motion from Sean. Do I have a second? Second from Ron. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This is a public hearing on Resolution 2024-24, establishing a fee schedule for records requests. Administrative Support Coordinator Kirsten Hilden. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. So, as you all might remember, we did waive the first reading of this, but I did discuss this with all of you prior to that first reading to let you know that this was coming in to help us be in compliance with HB 1002, which was passed earlier this year. I did some reading going back as far as about the middle of last year, looking at the past 91A requests. And I will say that the changes here would have only affected one, maybe two of the requests that we've received would have actually been charged. When I was here before, both Councillor Dunn and Councillor Faber had some suggestions in terms of the content and how much we were charging and whom we were charging. I did edit it to include for black and white printing up to 10 pages total free in accordance with what Councillor Dunn suggested. I did not adjust the color one. Part of that is because our color costs are astronomically higher, and for most intents and purposes for what people are requesting, black and white is fine. Councillor Faber, you had suggested that we maybe look at residents versus non-residents. We did start to look into that, but the provisions of the RSA do not distinguish between town residents and not, so we were concerned about where the legal ground would be on that, what legal standing we would be on that, what we would be opening ourselves up to by delineating. And it's not always straightforward to tell who is requesting something in order to determine that.
I looked at that myself, and I came to the same conclusions.
I will say the new HB 1002 does contain a provision, as does the policy that you see written here for electronic communication of 91A records, that allows exemptions for any individual who can determine they are indigent, media requesters, and any individual requesting information where the disclosure is in public interest. I will say we do currently, as long as we've had the right to know policy on the website, we have indicated that there is a charge for photocopies. In calendar year 2024, I think I might have my first person who's taking me up on that this coming week, for a commercial requester who's out of state. So this is not something that comes up frequently, but having a consistent charge would let us be transparent and open with people about what this process is going to cost them up front, rather than having them perhaps suggest that we're applying it capriciously, or it gets everybody on the same page as well, which I think is extraordinarily important for this topic. So that's what I have for you.
All right, so before I go to the council, folks, this is public comment, so I'd like to welcome anyone who'd like to have any questions or comments regarding Resolution 224-22. Seeing none, we'll go to the council.
So my only thought is, could we have 10 pages free under the scanning part too, not just the printing, or is there a reason not to have that? As I see the two main categories, printing and photocopying and scanning. So I see that above, but I didn't see it below.
The only issue with that is that the vast majority of the people who want scanning are commercial requesters, but there's no, and that's honestly why I didn't put that in there. However, there's absolutely no reason, if the council wants it, that we could not put it in there as well.
Do commercial requesters usually, is there a threshold where they'd usually go beyond, would they usually go beyond 10 pages? Would it be something where we scaled it back where we get most of them?
Yeah, so the commercial requests, and we've seen, it's been interesting because lately we've seen a significant uptick in commercial requests and a drop in local requesters recently. Commercial requests are largely firms around the country who have been retained to do work researching properties in town, so they often cast a wide net in their request. All documents for the past 20 years regarding any building permit on this property or any code violation on this property. So it's usually a substantial amount, and how you define that can be wide.
But most likely over 10 pages, I would think.
So yes, most likely over 10 pages in each file, yes.
I think that they typically are building and zoning inquiries. So somebody who, please tell me everything you know about this, not exactly like that, but this address, right? And then, so it depends. And that was, I think, Kirsten's hesitancy is some building and zoning files have nothing in them if it's undeveloped land. Some are this big if there's an enforcement history. So, and the thing with building, the building department files is they go back, to the 70s. Everything is on a different size sheet of paper. But I think that the way to skin the cat may be, and I offer as a suggestion, that we build in sort of that we codify what we're already doing, which is waiving our practices if appropriate. We will, if somebody comes in and asks for something that's easily producible, even though we might require them to come in and look at it under the statute, we don't. And so I think that if that's the consensus of the council, that that 10-page mark, if it's not a commercial requester, if it's somebody who seems to have, a legitimate area of inquiry, we can waive that. I think that, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Kirsten.
No, to give an example of that, I did have one request where almost every document, about 110 documents, were email, and then there was 3 individual pages that only existed on paper. Rather than ask the person to come in and see those 3 pages, it was much easier, much more cost efficient for everyone involved if I just scanned those 3 pages in. And so that's an example where we used our discretion based on the situation.
Mr. DeFrancisco. Name and address, sir, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tony DeFrancisco, One Cheshire. Just so that you know, a commercial, on the commercial side of the ledger, someone who is requesting that information, who's a commercial vendor, for lack of a better term, I don't know how else to describe it, whatever we charge them is pass-through money anyway to that vendor. So
to the applicant.
So there's really there's kind of no reason to give them a break. I see no reason at all, because it could be an appraiser trying to get some commercial feedback on a project that's going to happen in Hudson. And so they have to cast such a much wider net, because it's not a 3-family house that's readily available in Hudson. Commercial is so specific that it could be a project that's in Laconia that they're comparing. It could be one in Portsmouth that they're comparing. And so it's not even going to this stuff isn't even going to happen in Londonderry. They're just fishing, basically. So 2 things. Number one, I think your color documents are way too cheap. I think it's way more than double, based on how I look at it. Number one. Number two, I see no reason to do the same thing for commercial scanning that we do for black and white, to give them a free ride for 10 copies. It just doesn't make any sense. Scanning is way harder than pulling a file. Way more. You have to admit, it's way more work.
Scanning does take longer than photocopying.
Yeah,
yes.
so
Significantly.
why you give them a break, I don't know.
So to clarify my comments, mine wasn't for the commercial scenario, because it's pass through. You have agreed. That's exactly right. It's more for the scenario you outlined, where someone's going to have to scan and they have 3 pages, and then they either have to come in and it's a local request, it's something like that. So that's why I was concerned, and that's also why I asked if it's going to be the typical commercial is over 10 pages, because then it's like, yeah, they can.
Sure, and that's where the discretion comes in.
Yep.
Here's your 3 copies. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So if I can real quick. Thank you. Actually, go ahead.
Mr. Town Manager, you had kind of alluded to it, and certainly did Kirsten Hillidan, that it's quite time-consuming scanning documents, and especially larger documents that may be hard to manipulate onto our scanners. And sometimes, the question maybe is, do we have the right size scanner? And I'm wondering if $2 per page is even the right amount of money, and that might need to be increased because of the time, labor that goes into that.
Yeah, I mean, I can...
Especially with how busy our building department already is.
Right. I can let Kirsten speak to that. It is undoubtedly the case that scanning, particularly if it's not like a nicely collated set of recently printed documents, is a pain in the neck.
So in terms of the scanning of documents larger than 11 by 14, it is certainly subject to availability. Under the state law, we are required to provide documents in the form that they currently exist. So if they currently exist in digital form, we provide them in digital form. If they currently exist in physical form, if somebody is out of state, we will, and they want copies, we offer them photocopies, which is the easiest and least labor-intensive way of doing it for us. If the reason the scanning is there, and I will say there's a very specific circumstance in which people, it has to do with election materials, is what people want scanned most.
Interesting.
We get requests to scan in checklists, return to undeclared lists that only exist in physical form. And that's probably, there was no provision for doing it before. It was just a hard no.
Gotcha.
Now the guidance from the Secretary of State's office has shifted slightly. So if we are going, if we can scan and implement our policies to charge for it if they exist. Now, I have scanned in a checklist before. It's back before I worked for the town when I was a supervisor. It's an extraordinarily time-consuming process. And while you're not creating a physical record and costing the town physical money because it is an optional service, we are not required under law to do that process. Then because we are changing the form of the document, the Secretary of State's office has issued the guidance that yes, you can follow your town's policy for scanning and charging for that.
Okay.
And so that's where this comes from. If the documents already exist electronically under 91A, we don't charge at all for them, with the exception, and this is the new piece, of email requests totaling over 250 messages. The point of this is and we've gotten a couple of them. That's why I said there's one, maybe two, that this would have applied to if this existed in the beginning of 2023, where somebody simply asks for all emails between this person and this person mentioning this word. That is legally and technically and absolutely searchably a narrow enough request under 91A if you're requesting between one person and another person mentioning a word. Or all emails sent to these 4 people in town from this person. That's very narrowly defined. We can absolutely search that. But oftentimes those requests will turn up thousands of results. And so after we pull those thousands of results, we actually have to go through them one by one and redact them and make sure that we're redacting personal information, anything that's attorney-client privileged. So that is why the state in HB 1002 said, yes, you can now charge if the result of the request is going to be over 250 emails. Or you can approach the person and ask them to narrow down the request to the most pertinent information. So it's designed to help guide individuals to the information they're looking for while avoiding the wide net results, which are not going to be helpful to the requester or to transparency efforts of the government.
I guess that what I was trying to get at was more real estate plans and what we have in the building department. If they are large size plans that are time consuming and large to manipulate, that could be quite time consuming in our building department.
So those are the wide format printouts. Those are $5 a page. You notice there's not a wide format printout listed under scanning.
Right.
So that's not a regular option under scanning.
Okay.
Documents larger than 11 by 14 are not wide format printouts. Those would only be available for $5 per page, which is actually consistent with what the building department currently charges.
I guess my question would be, is that even enough money? Do we want to charge more than that $5?
Yeah, I mean,
that
to your point, Mr. Vice Chair, that is where you would find a lot of those wide format documents, and yeah,
it's time consuming.
It's very time consuming.
Right. A thought from the council on that piece. I mean, it's time consuming on our staff for these requests from commercial entities across the country or state.
Tony also mentioned the color copies. Is it something we should look more into?
I'm probably not the right person to answer what the cost of a color copy is.
The other thing is that there are bounds of what has been generally considered allowable in terms of what's considered a fair and reasonable cost for a copy. We are allowed to capture the actual cost of making the copy, which includes the wear and tear in the printer, labor, the cost that our contract company charges us. There is no clear provision in the RSA for charging for labor. So if we inch up too high for a cost, we run the risk of somebody challenging us. That exact number has not yet been adjudicated by the state court. I'm sure it will be at some point, and we'll have a much firmer guideline. And the general guidance by the NHMA is to review this fee schedule each year.
Okay.
So general thought is for each fiscal year, this will come around, and the council, you all will have the ability to look at it and say, we need to increase these costs. We don't need this. And this is just the first incarnation of it. So to respond to you, I think you're both absolutely right. My hesitancy and my initial judgment placing it here was this seemed well within the safe margin for what we would not receive blowback for having unreasonable costs.
Fair enough. I'd wholeheartedly agree with that, and I'd like to keep these the same unless somebody has a good reason to follow.
Yeah, so I would agree with Sean. There's nothing saying that we can't, with proper notice, revisit this annually or even sooner if needed.
Absolutely.
So I think my personal opinion is I think maybe proceeding as written would be a good way to kind of get a gauge and see how it is, and we can always adjust if needed or as required. Thoughts?
My only last thought is, do we have an accounting upon how much we've received in the past?
I'm sorry?
Do we have an accounting for how much we've received in the past for printing and photocopying?
Costs.
And costs.
That's a good question. So, we know, I think, what we have. I think it would be difficult to parse out. Maybe you can elaborate.
So since I took over providing the responses to people who did not require going through legal, I have not provided physical photocopies to anyone in the past calendar year. I know earlier in the calendar year there were some that were provided on physical photocopies. Almost every record has been electronic, or they have, we've had a couple of commercial groups come in and look at the records themselves, and then they can take their own pictures, and that's that. As far as the over 251, like I said, I think we would have had two, but I don't see this photocopying honestly changing much more in the day-to-day. Except I would have said it wouldn't change at all unless I had somebody last week who put in a request who wants photocopies. So this is the first one that I've seen in 14, 15 months.
And I think the other benefit of it is, and I don't want to rehash the whole argument for or against 1002, but I think that what this is going to do is, to the person who just is thinking about from their living room sending in a request like Kirsten described for all emails, that the town manager has sent in the last 10 months. Well, now you have a policy that you have to consult, and it has numbers and it has dollar signs attached to it, and hopefully it just gives a little bit more pause before we get some of these requests. It's not prohibiting anybody from doing it, but it's something that hasn't been the case before, and I think that's beneficial.
So more so in compliance to state law.
Correct.
Okay. So before we go to the council for a vote, I'd like to remind those in attendance that this is a public hearing, and more than welcome to input at any time. Seeing none, so at this time, before I have a motion and a second, if you have two options, three, but if you would like to see this amended with any changes, at that time, the counselor can make a motion to amend with a suggestion. We'll take a vote, or you can make a motion to adopt as written ordinance resolution 204-22. So with that, I'll accept the motion. However,
I will motion to adopt as written,
all
Mr.
right.
Chair.
So I have a motion from Ted. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chairman votes in the affirmative. Resolution 2024-22 is adopted. With that, I'll also accept the motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
The motion from
Second.
Ted, second from Ron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Approval of minutes, August 12th of 2024. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
from Ted and a second from Ron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Liaison reports.
I have one.
Yeah.
The Beautified Londonderry. We still have one alternate position that is open, if anyone's interested. They're also going to be doing a fall cleanup on October 19th from 9 to 12. It's a Saturday. So anyone that wants to come out and help pick up the trash, October 19th is the next time that they'll be doing fall cleanup. And that's what I have for so far.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
So the master plan committee, we had a good table at election day, gathering surveys. Our goal is 1,000. I believe we're in the high 500s right now, so we're doing well on that front to get some input for some of these things we're talking about as a community, which I think is wonderful.
Where can you find that survey?
There's a sign right out in the hallway out there. I believe it's posted on the town website
Right.
too as well.
Here.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else?
I believe you can also find the survey at the library as well.
Yes, outside
Great
of the
point,
library.
Tim.
And we
also-
actually laminated some pages and put them on trailheads too.
Go ahead, Shearson. Thank you.
It's also on the top of pinned to the top of our Facebook page until the survey closes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anything?
I also think it's wonderful that they've been collecting information and suggestions from kids in town as well at the library, not just the adults. I mean, eventually the kids will be inheriting the town.
Points. All right. So, as school board liaison, I have a couple things. So, there had been 3 potential project costs that was presented to school board addressing space needs, full day kindergarten, and the district office space. Public comments were heard in the project costs regarding the $8.7 million to $21 million in the that range from $8.7 million to $21 million. The board will take 2 weeks to review the information and deliberate on the 17th to decide on the best option. District ended its 2024 fiscal year with a fund balance of $854,807. The board has been aware of the needs to replace the district-wide analog phone system by 2026 with an estimated cost of $400,000. The board voted to allocate $400,000 from the unassigned fund balance for this purpose, while $454,800 will be returned to offset the December tax rate. They also reviewed policy updates as they are ongoing and part of the board's continued efforts. And lastly, the school district entered into a 5-year group metering agreement with Freedom Energy. That might sound familiar to the council, resulting in a projected savings of $114,000 over the duration of the agreement. With that, Mr. Town Manager, your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of items tonight, actually just over a couple. I wanted to just give a shout out, spread the love a little bit in the spirit that you've adopted tonight, Mr. Chair, and shout out Ilona Arndt, the Senior Affairs Director. So not only did she host recently the senior breakfast, but at the same time put on a hearing clinic and then a separate foot clinic. And I understand that the senior center was just completely packed. She was able to handle all of that very, very nicely and efficiently. So my thanks to her and to the volunteers up at the senior center. I have drafted and put in front of you and out back for the public a proposed short-term rental ordinance. There's been a lot of discussion that has come to the council before about one or two issues that we've had in town. Certainly we don't have the issues that a Guilford or a Meredith have in terms of, or a Hampton, in terms of people renting party houses, so to speak, and keeping their neighbors up all night. But believe it or not, people do rent on a short-term basis in Londonderry, and until now we've been essentially powerless to address that, other than through the existing tools like the noise ordinance. This is something that I anticipate we will not use every day, but it would be nice to have in place if and when we do need it. And as I said, we've heard recent complaints about this very issue. The ordinance is not anywhere near as extensive as some of the ordinances that you would find in the Lakes region or on the seacoast. It's merely essentially a registration ordinance. If you're going to rent your property on a short-term basis, we want to know that you're doing that. We want to know who we can contact after hours if there's a problem. It essentially just puts the owner on, on notice that they're responsible for any violations of the noise ordinance that take place at the rented property. It's not even here for a first reading this evening. It's here for your input, for your consideration. And I'm certainly open to any feedback about it. But it really is intended to have as light a touch as possible, but just to create a framework for us to address these issues if and when they do arise.
A couple questions for you, Mr. Town
Yes.
Manager. Actually, direction and then a question. If you could please have our town council just review this.
Certainly.
In compliance with state law and everything, and just provide maybe a one-page memo for the council and public.
Happy to do that, Mr. Chair.
Their analysis of that. Fees associated with this. So when I mean fees, everything has a cost. Time has a cost. Staff time has a cost. And I'd like to have maybe not necessarily. Actually, I'm going to pause on that because I feel that might be digging a little bit too deep in operational, which Charter is very clear on that. But maybe a conversation on your analysis on potential staff cost and if that should be like an application fee or not. And then lastly, I see violation, a fine of $1,000 for each day, the violation. Can you please talk a little bit more of those violations? Please?
Certainly. So basically what this references is existing state law that makes it a violation, which is it's not a criminal offense. It is it's a speeding ticket. It's equivalent to a speeding ticket in terms of the level of the offense. And violating any town ordinance is a violation, and it's subject to those penalties of up to $1,000 a day. Or if there's a lesser penalty that's noted, then that would be the penalty. But really what this does is it just says, look, if you are violating this ordinance, here's this existing law that gives us the ability to enforce that. What is a violation of the ordinance? Renting on a short-term basis without obtaining a permit. So if we had someone who just was going to fly under the radar and think that, well, I'm going to do it until I get caught, well, that's a violation of the ordinance because we have a requirement. And then the only other stated violation of the ordinance would be a violation of the town's noise ordinance that's taking place at the property. So the noise ordinance is very limited in scope because there are a lot of constitutional protections around any kind of speech. I think that our noise ordinance recognizes that what is offensive to one person might not be offensive to another person. So it has to be offensive to the reasonable person in order to violate the noise ordinance. I can't remember the last time we issued a citation for a noise ordinance violation. Very rare. But, in the example that I heard about this week from a resident, having a house full of 20 people and setting fireworks off in a dense neighborhood at 1 a.m, that probably constitutes a violation of the noise ordinance. So that's really, it's supposed to be as light a touch as possible so that people know what the standard is and what the penalty is.
How do we, so for other violations of ordinances, how do we how do we enforce that? And what are the legal options past notice of violation to say, hey, you owe us money?
Yeah. So the strongest stick, if you will, is injunctive relief, and that exists under state law. So if there is a code violation, a junkyard, an illegal junkyard situation, or a significant issue with a property, we would go to court, and we would ask the court to essentially order the owner to bring the property into compliance. That often comes with legal fees that are shifted by state law. I think it would be
recoverable.
Yes. Actually, in that kind of a proceeding, the presumption is that if the town is, in fact, I think it may be the rule that if the town is successful in obtaining that kind of relief, that the legal fees are paid by the property owner who's in violation. And there have been multiple instances over my time with the town where courts have awarded those fees to the town on the theory that you shouldn't have to pay for your neighbor's code violation, because ultimately this gets borne by the taxpayers.
Okay. Anything further or any other questions?
So the one thing I see that you might have an issue with right here is Section 5 with notice required, just because there are short-term rentals where people actually live in them and they may be gone for a certain amount of time, so they're not going to want to put a sign on their house. There's also, it goes to the look and feel of it. A lot of times when people do short-term rentals, they want to feel like they're in a house, and it's a little thing, but can be a big thing. And I know particularly out in the Seacoast area, they don't have anything like that when their short-term rental ordinance. So just something to think about.
I think that's a good suggestion. And I think, as long as we have a contact, an after-hours contact, I think we have what we need.
Have we seen an uptick in complaints regarding short-term rentals?
I've seen an uptick of one in the past week, but it's the same neighborhood that we all have talked about. The neighbors are fairly exasperated. It's a different set of neighbors this time, and so it's hard for me to say. We've been, we were successful in mitigating that situation until we weren't, which has now occurred.
The thing I find curious about that is it would be in the owner's best interest not to rent to people who are going to make noise complaints, their likelihood of damaging the property is increased. So that's
correct.
I think
interesting.
There's a lot of factors regarding that. Duration, how many occupants? Obviously, if you have a one bedroom, as mentioned, you want to rent out a room on a short-term rental platform that would yield that could sleep two people. That would yield different volume and probably have no complaints versus a single property that might have 50 occupancy of 50. So I think there's definitely those considerations. You were going to say something?
Well, just that I really think that we're talking about a handful of properties in town that are probably being rented out regularly on a short-term basis. I don't think that this is a systemic problem or except to the people who have to deal with it.
Had there been, excuse me, being involved in the previous complaint, had there been any new attempts to reach out to the property owner?
Yes, I made that request to the police department, and I don't have an update.
Any further update?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else from the council? So Ron?
No, I'm good.
So I think consideration to Section 5, as Councilor Faber stated, and just for clarification, this is something that we're going to have first reading,
correct,
second reading,
that's right. If you tell me go, don't bring it back, I won't bring it back as well. It's really, again, I'm in the spirit of we're dealing with a lot of these things where we haven't been good necessarily about keeping up with our regulations or refreshing our regulations over time. I really think it's important to at least have the discussion. I had some time over the weekend to put this together and do a little bit of research. So it's really in that spirit that I brought it here.
Is this something So I've observed other towns that this would go through the planning board for input. Is that standard? Again, different charter, different regulations, same state law, but
it's a great question. It doesn't. So it's a short-term rental ordinance is not a land use ordinance.
Okay.
But it does affect land use to a certain extent. So I think the planning board would probably be happy to have a discussion about it. There may be people on there who have some expertise that we could access. So I'd be certainly happy to refer to the planning board for a recommendation as well.
So before we get consensus from the council, I just want to point out just the importance of, as the town manager stated, it's not required, but it would also allow another opportunity, as they would, correct me if I'm wrong, have public input for this as well.
Yes, they could choose to have a public hearing.
Okay. A potential opportunity for a public input, and then we would have a public hearing for this as well, allowing the public to opine. So.
Because I'd be interested to hear what our real estate agents have to say.
Well, I can think of one that probably has plenty of.
Planning board's been asking for this for 2 years.
So, Sean, excuse me, Sean, you were going to say something. It looked like
one thing that I hear frequently is not just noise complaints with short-term rentals. So I want to make sure that we have a mechanism where, because I think you had just said there's not really a lot of noise complaints that get enforced now. We have a mechanism that addresses all noise complaints, not just from short-term rentals, because that is a thing I hear periodically. And so if we already have an ordinance in place, just extending it to this may not result in what we're looking for. So if we can think of a better way to take care of that overall for everyone, that would be great.
That's a good observation, and I may talk with the police department. I think the noise ordinance is worth a look as well, to make sure we all understand it and the public understands it, and to see if it can be tweaked as well.
What is the council's consensus on having this go before the planning board prior to the council?
I mean, I think technically this falls under us, right?
It
Not
does.
them.
Yeah. It does.
But I think, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way on that.
Yeah, I guess
I'm fine with dealing with it here.
Yeah.
I'd just like to hear some public opinion.
Yeah.
I'd like to do my own research too and find out what's going on with it.
And maybe the better way to do that would be to have it at the town council and invite the planning board as public comment members on it.
Yeah.
Or is it sort of a joint session on it?
I would say invite for public comment. I mean, we just had a discussion at the planning board about boards kind of stretching beyond their purview, and I feel like it touches land use, but I don't know if it's in, out, and that's a hard one.
I mean, as the town manager said, it's a tricky situation. It's not quite land use.
Yeah.
And I will say, I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but I just could not be happier with the cooperation between the planning board and my staff.
Yeah.
I don't think that relationship has ever been better.
I agree.
And I think that you have a planning board that is looking to cooperate not only with me and my staff, but also with the town council and to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So it's a lot of new energy. Everybody's swimming in the right direction. I think if you invite the planning board to come, you're going to get a lot of good feedback.
I think we should do that. Invite public opinion, and if the public doesn't say that they need it, then then it goes away. If they say we need it, then we move forward.
Right.
Do we know when the next planning board meeting is?
I think it's October 4th.
Okay. So I guess my only request would be that our second reading / public.
I'm sorry, the 7th.
Okay.
No, I'm all screwed up. It's the 2nd. Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess my only request is to have the second reading after a planning board meeting, if the chairman chooses to invite members of the planning board and let them know. So if you could collaborate with the chair,
by all means,
and just let him know our timeline, so that he could inform the planning board again. To be perfectly clear, land use and council, two totally different things. So just to come to our meeting to discuss input and suggestions, not have it on their agenda.
Certainly. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anything else?
I guess, he mentioned, noise as a whole. Say, for example, if people are hearing fireworks late into the night, who are we calling? Are we calling the police, the fire department?
Call the police. Yeah.
Call the police. I mean, what if you don't know?
Unless they're hitting your
see them?
house, then you probably should go.
But, like, what if you can't see what direction they're coming from? Are you just going to say, I hear fireworks going off right now?
Yep. Yep. You could call the police. I mean,
what is quiet hours?
I think it's 10, isn't it?
10 o'clock. I can't recall when they end, but it's the same with gunfire. The PD often responds to calls for gunfire.
Conduct their own
they're pretty good at figuring out where it's coming from. But yeah, I would call the police.
Because certainly within like the past 2 months, I've been hearing fireworks going off late into the night, and I'm like, great. I hope my son doesn't wake up from that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone else is thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's fortunately we're turning the it's starting to get dark early, but yeah, it seems like people love to set off their fireworks when the sun goes down. So, so that I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No. So you have the direction with reaching out with Megan Courier, Attorney Courier, on that and providing just a one sheet analysis, and then
absolutely.
Okay. All right. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A little bit of a surprise that we're no longer in drought. We're actually no longer even really in abnormally dry. It seems
it hasn't
drier.
rained in a long time.
It hasn't rained in a long time. It seems drier out than it was the last time we were here, but this is what it says. So
my water bill would state otherwise.
So that's just an update on drought. I'm going to assume that the council doesn't want us to do anything with regard to the drought ordinance that could be brought into effect. The next update, just to assure everyone that we are, I now have a reminder on my calendar every Friday to check the arbovirus map. And it's updated every Friday. This shows that we are still at low risk for human acquisition of an arbovirus, including EEE or West Nile virus.
And
so
this data is provided by the epidemiologists up at the HHS.
Precisely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that is that. I just want to close by Mr. DeFrancesco referenced it earlier, how many meetings we're recording. Again, spreading the love, Mr. Chair. My thanks to Drew, Aaron, and the cable department. I mean, they are doing just yeoman's work, bringing all of these meetings to the public, and can't thank them enough for their efforts on behalf of the people on there. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, our next meeting is September 23rd, which is next Monday, here in the Moose Hill Council Chambers at 7 p.m. I'd like to open, if there's anyone else that would like to say anything, I'll give an opportunity for that. Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ron. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Sean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.